What's up, guys? Welcome back to the THP Strength Podcast. My name is John Evans. I have a 40-ish, 43, we don't know, vertical. This is Isaiah Rivera. He has a 50.5-inch vertical, and I've been coaching him since 2018. So it's been about 7 years, almost 8, coming up very soon when the new year sets in. And in this episode, we're going to be talking about something we are coining tendoning. And I'm getting a lot of questions about this in my DMs, which is kind of funny because we said it tongue-in-cheek, kind of joking, and it's seemingly caught on.
It arose, I think it originated with calf raises, with our seated calf raises.
Yeah.
So it's probably back in the 24-hour fitness days, actually.
Probably
even
and
then
like,
you'd be like, if I did them like that, my Achilles.
Yeah, it would rupture. Before we do that, I just want to say if you're interested in a free 6-week challenge, we're currently running one. You can click the link in the description, and you will get sent to an application where you can fill it out and see if you're a good fit for this potential challenge. So if you're interested in that, go to thpstrength.com or click the link in the description below.
And pin comment. Having said that, and I also want to be clear, there's a deposit. You put a deposit back. If you do the challenge, you get it back.
If
we
you
filter
complete
out
the challenge.
all the
posers.
Yeah.
We don't want any posers here. We want people who are really about it.
Yeah. So let's explain what it is.
Yeah, what is tendoning?
I'm going to tell you exercises. You tell me how you would tendon it.
If I would tend, okay,
No, how you would
okay,
tend
how
it.
I would tend it. All right.
All right, let's seated calf raise. Do it with your hand.
Yeah, I would just go.
And what's not tending it? All right, let's do today's example, a sprint.
The sprint. So it'd be like, that's not tendoning it. Tendoning it would be pop, 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 pop.
2-foot jump.
2-foot jump. Whooping. That's tendoning it. Not 2-foot jumping. That's muscling it. So we have muscling it because we know this term has been around, muscling it. You're muscling it. Mm-hmm. But we never talked about the antithesis of muscling it, i.e. tendoning it. So tendoning it is really a funny way of describing the stretch shortening cycle. And the stretch shortening cycle happens under certain time constraints. So if you have I think the classically research-based definition is under 200 milliseconds on the ground, then it is truly a stretch shortening cycle. However, I don't think, I know for a fact that you can still get a stretch reflex at longer intervals and shorter intervals, which is one part of a stretch shortening cycle. The other part is essentially how much energy is stored and released in the tendon. So if you're assuming that you're only getting elastic energy from really short ground contact times and stuff like that, that's essentially saying that when you're getting to the bottom of a lift and you're changing direction, you're dissipating all the energy and not benefiting from it at all, which I don't think is the case. You're probably still using the tendon to some degree when you're doing even heavy squats, like bouncing out of the bottom or catching a clean or something like that, where the interval is a lot longer, but it's going to be less tendon dominant. So when we say tendoning it, we're essentially describing very fast changes of direction where the tendon is storing and releasing a lot of energy. Even on the seated calf raise, you're probably still not in a true stretch shortening cycle, but at the bottom, that change of direction does happen. For a brief period, you're going to be decelerating the weight, getting to like a stopping point and reaccelerating it. So even if it's not the whole range of motion, some part of that will be tendon dominant. And so when we're on the seated calf raise, what you'll typically notice is guys will go all the way to the full triple extension, and they'll kind of drop down to neutral and let it free fall. And then essentially what happens is they're holding this neutral position, getting a stretch out of the Achilles and allowing you to concentrically push up more easily. And one of the things that actually determines whether you can lift or not lift something is the velocity you have at the start of the rep. So for example, when you get to failure on a squat or a bench press, you're not able to accelerate it past the sticking point, meaning you're going to be decelerating. And if you decelerate to 0 or even a negative vertical velocity and the bar starts to come down, then you didn't have a high enough velocity out of the bottom of the push to pass the sticking point and then get through the sticking point. Where this is maybe not the case would be in like an isometric lift or pin squat, where you're starting in the sticking point, you've got enough weight on the bar that you can't actually pick it up past the sticking point. So that's, I guess, how I would kind of view it. Now, in terms of the adaptation, you are going to get more tendon adaptation from long, heavy loading. So what that means is that you have cross links that are coming apart. You're probably going to signal for tendon adaptation or collagen remodeling or maybe some change in the tendon. And then you're also meeting a time constraint. So we always say, like, imagine you put your hand in water really slowly versus slapping it. If you have a really long period of time, you'll also see the tendon uncrimp and the crosslinks uncrimp, and that will allow for further tendon adaptation. So if you want tendon adaptation, you need to do it in strength training. And so this is why you don't always want guys
which
to
is
tendon.
contra.
Yeah,
which is contrary to, I guess, like, logic isn't even the right word, but like it's the common thought. Like
if I load the tendon more,
fast stuff,
I'm gonna get more tendon adaptation. But that's actually not.
But you're
what
really
happens.
training your nervous system when
Yeah.
you do that stuff.
Exactly. And we do see that athletes that do a lot of jumping sports, so for example, if you looked at basketball players, you looked at volleyball players, assuming they weren't doing really any significant strength training, they will have more cross-sectional area in the tendon, but the volume that it probably took and when that happened is the question. So you're getting potentially 600 contacts a week in volleyball, right? And maybe you're doing that from the time you're 12 through like 21. Most of those tendon adaptations are probably going to happen when you're younger. That's when the tendon is going to respond the best to that type of loading, right? But you also don't want to put too much plyometric volume in that period. Well, you can, but you're going to not benefit from doing them at a later time neurologically, meaning you're going to try to do them to the best of your ability. You'll probably get a little bit better at them. You'll probably get some tendon adaptation. But then when you go to do them later on, after you've done a lot of training, I would say it's like the silver bullet effect. Like that stimulus was the most effective the first time. So if you're doing really advanced plyos and you're like 13 or 14 years old, there's pros and cons to it. Pros, you're going to get good tendon adaptation. You're going to get some neurological benefit from that. But later in life, it's going to be blunted heavily. And I think I've seen this. Fabian has seen it to some extent. Like plyos just don't. It's a good way to sharpen up your nervous system in advanced athletes, but I don't really think it moves the needle too much when it comes to actual jump performance. I think that happens through a cluster of adaptation stacking over time, and you're using like the residual training effects of one cycle to then do another cycle and benefit from those residual training effects while you're focusing on something else. I mean, that was the whole logic behind block periodization, which is like only do one thing. You have a residual effect of it while you're detraining that quality. You're doing all of another thing, and then you're doing all of another thing. And the downside is that those residuals would drop off too much and you wouldn't benefit from it. So that's why we do long conjugate. But I say that all to say, I think tendoning it in the weight room, you probably still get both those benefits because you're meeting the time aspect of it. You're always under tension. You've got longer intervals potentially, especially if you're doing like 20 reps of it, something like that.
Yeah.
But I don't know if, 4 reps of tendoning it is going to do much outside of load the muscle and the nervous system.
Like I think the reason athletes that jumped a lot when they were younger got so much tendon adaptation with the plyos is the volume. Like getting 600 jumps a week is probably making more changes to your tendon than 3 slow lifts. It's just when you get older, you'll get hurt. You can't afford to do that level of volume with plyos.
Yeah, volume of intensity.
I also I want to insert a side point here. If you're doing strength training, heavy slow strength training for your tendon, for tendon health, don't tendon it. It's one of the most common issues with squatting, and guys do it subconsciously when the lift gets hard, because tendoning it at the bottom of the rep allows you to enter with more velocity. So you're able to lift more weight. So what happens is guys will be doing, let's say 4x8 slow squats, and the first 4 or 5 reps look good, but then rep 6, it's like a little bit of a bounce and then a little bit more of a bounce. But you have to literally lean into what feels harder when you're lifting for tendon health to get more adaptation out of the tendon.
You see guys go the other direction when they do that. And if you, like a lot of the time, guys will think it's just the eccentric contraction, so it's the down phase, and they'll be lowering down to the box, and they'll explode out of the bottom. And I used to see this all the time in track and field. Guys would do it with calf raises, they would do it with box squats for tendon health, and it just ends up making it way worse because you are still getting a mini stretch shortening cycle. You are still storing and releasing energy when you explode out of the bottom. There is going to be some sort of micro counter movement on that change of direction that allows you to lift it faster. And that's a negative consequence of doing them fast for tendon adaptation, because that's what's making the tendon bad in the first place, was you jumped way too much, the tendon got way too painful, and now you're doing something that's meant to be rehabilitative, and you're actually making the tendon worse. So you might be thinking, well, if tendoning it doesn't help for tendon adaptation, then, you know, why is that making it worse? And in the flip side of that argument, right, it's negatively adapting. Well, it's not necessarily that. You're just actually causing damage to the tissue, and it's not meeting the threshold for adaptation, which is time and tension. So you want to go slow to meet both those thresholds, but you're also building back into a stretch shortening cycle, which is you're lengthening the muscle in the tendon, pausing for a second, and then coming back up. But it's slower, and then you'll add velocity later in to allow you to, quote unquote, tendon it.
And I would use pain as the guide for when you can add velocity back in. Like generally, if you're healthy enough to lift, what would 200 pounds slow be? That's like 60% around there of my max. If you can do that, if you can lift around 50 to 60% of your max slow and you don't feel any pain, you're probably good to start putting more intent into it and build intent as time goes on. And if it's not hurting and next day pain stays the same or even decreases, then you're probably good to start building in regular tempo lifts.
Yeah, so in short, tendoning it, it's just going fast. It's being bouncy, it's being elastic, it's being stiff. It doesn't cause tendon adaptation.
And
but
there's
it
a time and
does.
place for it.
There's time and place for it. Time and place for it. Very low volumes when you're healthy. If you're not healthy, don't tendon it. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Unless it's a healthy tendon.
All right. And if you want us to use these principles in your training, you want to try it out for free, if you can work out consistently for 6 weeks straight, link is in the bio or the pinned comment. Go check it out.
See y'all.